Our government, through mismanagement and neglect of our electrical infrastructure, we don't have enough electricity for the country. So we have periods of the day, every day, where the power just goes off. Like currently my electricity is off right now.
Man. Como los grandes podcast, episode number 23, the first episode in English, and today we are here with Killer Rabbit. Thank you, mate, for joining.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on. It's very cool to be here.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Killer Rabbit is a pixel artist I found on Instagram. I took a look at his portfolio and I think it's very exciting and awesome. So I'm very curious about the inspirations and the backstory behind your pixel artwork. What is this first step when you are going to start a new pixel art?
Well, I personally I try to have like an emotion behind my pieces that tends to resonate with people and stand out, because there's a lot of pixel art out there. You know, it's one of the oldest forms of video game graphics. So I'm competing with 30, 40 years worth of, other pixel artists. So and on Instagram especially, there's lots of other examples. So I need to have something that stands out when someone's just scrolling, whether it be Instagram, Reddit, whatever site my stuff appears on. So I find often a sort of wistful emotion, like you can see in my work, I have a lot of figures looking off at the distance. So I try to make a scene where the viewer can imagine themselves in that world, in that position, and empathize with the emotions that the character themselves are feeling.
Yeah, I'm currently noticing that looking at your pieces, I'm seeing a lot of silhouettes on the artworks, more like shadowing aspect or shadows present in the work. So is this because of a specific motive or concept? What is the meaning behind the use of the shadow in your work?
I like to use the shadow in the same way that video games use a first-person perspective. It doesn't reveal too much about the character, so it lets the audience insert themselves. Obviously, you have to choose something like a gender or a height of the character, but the less detail and specific characteristics I can put in the figures, the better for me. So then it doesn't matter what race, nationality, age you are, you can imagine yourself being that character in that scene.
Yeah,
it's the same reason if you look at the cityscapes and landscapes. I try to avoid specific cities, like you'll never see something like the Seattle Space Needle or a famous mountain in the background. But everyone can relate to, at least if they don't live in a city, they've at least seen a city on TV or in the movies. And so they can imagine themselves living that life.
Yeah. I noticed it as well that for most of your pieces in the portfolio, you have, for example, on Instagram, the caption has an story too, and you tell a story with the artwork. So do you like and you enjoy writing as well as doing this pixel art?
I do, but I haven't written as much these days. I was more into it back when I was in school, when I had more time.
Oh, yeah. I understand that, of course.
Yeah, I try and use short titles, and if I can get a double meaning in there, that's also a bonus. I try and leave the title relatively open-ended, so someone could imagine more of a backstory to the title as well.
Open-ended, yeah. Nice to know. And I see, the reference to cyberpunk.
Yes. I personally love cyberpunk movies, but obviously there is a crossover with anime, with things like Ghosts in the Shell or Akira.
A very good one.
Big reason I like cyberpunk is the dark sort of mood that cyberpunk media tends to have. The high-tech, low life. And that also lends itself to dark scenes with lots of bright colors, neons, advertising, and reflections, which you can get a lot of mileage out, because in pixel art, obviously you have a very small canvas. So every pixel you use has to count for something. So the fewer colors you have, it works better, in my opinion. You can get strong contrast. Bold colors work well there.
Yeah, of course. The way you use the space in the composition, when we talk about the marketing aspect of the artwork, you have buildings and you have different brands on the buildings and logos, in this world. So you are taking a very good approach. The placement of the marketing.
Yeah.
In a cyberpunk world, there are a lot of abusive background. The presence of the abusive background can be a problem if you don't know how to organize the composition.
Yeah.
And I see here that you do a very great work. So I'm excited to have you here. Thank you again for joining.
It's a pleasure. Happy to be here.
So I'm seeing that your recent works are mostly centered in one main color. For example, we can see here this first one that we have a store and then the use of only one color. What motivated you to come from using a couple of colors and then choosing only one?
Well, this particular series is a sort of self-imposed challenge of mine where I'm trying to make monochromatic artworks using each of the colors of the rainbow, with the resulting, if I take all of them together, the goal is to put them as like a sort of rainbow gradient to make a wallpaper for my computer or anyone's computer. So far, I'll send you a copy.
Okay, so you're doing this mostly for yourself too, so you can have a nice wallpaper.
Yes, that is pretty much. And then it also helps me have a theme to make, Instagram posts, because finding inspiration can be, difficult. I'm sure you can relate as a creative. Just coming up with ideas is often the hardest part.
I can imagine the situation. You're at your computer and you say, man, I need a new wallpaper, but I can find one that I enjoy, so let's do one for myself.
Exactly. And it will be available for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a store currently available with some of your pieces available online, right?
Yeah, it's on Ko-Fi. Everything there is free, but there is a tip jar if anyone wants to donate or whatever. But everything there is free.
Yeah. For the people that are hearing now and that are watching now, we'll be leaving the link to this Ko-Fi shop of Killer Rabbit and another link to his portfolio, so you can make sure to go and check his amazing work on pixel art and the products and digital products that he has available right now at this moment. So make sure to go to the link. So let's continue talking about your work. I decided to go here to your most recent works, but I see here that you have other specific contents that we can see that you use the cinematic motion and one color too, I will say, or maybe two colors. We have a blue here, and then you use the fire and a very good looking gradient there. So tell me more about this one.
Thank you. So in general, I prefer limited palettes when working with pixel art, partly because there's less can go wrong. Like, I don't have any formal art training, so my color theory is a little shaky at best.
Oh, yeah.
So if you stick with one color, it's harder to make something that looks jarring. And
that makes sense, of course. Yeah. And I'm surprised by your humility, and I think that, of course, adds to this artwork. I think it's very important, when you meet an artist and his art, and then you can see that as a person, he's a very kind one and a very nice person to meet. And I believe those are qualities that you have, and I'm more than happy that helped you.
I feel like a real, what do you call it? Not a celebrity, but a real artist. I feel like I've made it.
You're a real artist. Don't worry about that. For sure, you're a real one. And you just have to see your work to know that.
Another reason to use the limited palettes for pixel art particularly is for a lot of history. The color palettes on pixel art were limited by the hardware available at the time. Like back in the day, computers could only render sometimes even 4 colors. If you look at something like the early Game Boys, Nintendos could only have like 32 to 200 colors. So it does also, there's a long tradition of using limited palettes in pixel art.
Did you use the Game Boy back in the day? How much time had you been doing this?
I missed the bus on pixel art. I sort of started my gaming journey with the Xbox 360 generation. But I did actually manage to get a Game Boy Color at a yard sale for 20 cents in my currency, which is like less than a cent in American currency. I came with one game, which was Hamtaro Time. And my brother and I played it to absolute death. Yeah.
Looking at your work, I can notice the reference. I can notice the passion as well for this type of content, the video game content. That's another question I had. So you decided to start on pixel art because of the movie industry or the gaming industry. What was that first point of touch that you say to yourself, I want to do this and I want to dedicate to pixel art at the moment?
For me, I'm definitely more inspired by the game aspect of it. Like back in high school, my friends and I, and I'm sure many people can relate, we thought, wow, we really like games. Let's make a game. And then we started off in Blender 3D and we were like, wow, this is really hard. You need talent to do this. And being, like 12 or 13, we had none of that. So then we did the next, the most available thing to us, which was RPG Maker. And like, there's a lot of really impressive RPG Maker games out there. Ours was not one of them. So we started off using the default assets, and I think it was BX Ace or one of the earlier versions of RPG Maker. It's moved on a lot since then. And then we quickly ran into limits of like what we wanted to show and do in the game just wasn't possible with the default assets and even some of the free asset packs people have put out there. So we took the default assets and we put them into GIMP at the time, which is like a free Photoshop alternative, and edited the assets to fit our needs, and then edited them some more and more until eventually we were making our own stuff.
Yeah, of course. How about your lifestyle and the way you work? Do you do this and you are currently living of this, or you are trying to, or is this a hobby? What can you tell me about this?
This is currently my full-time job. I'm very fortunate to be able to, well, not only work from home, but be able to do something that I enjoy doing. My country has a very low exchange rate with the US dollar. So I work primarily on Fiverr. It's like a freelancing site where you say, I will do this.
Yeah, of course.
This is what I charge. And the dollar is currently, I think, $19 or $20 to the South African rand, which is our currency. And like for perspective, your average rent for like a 2-bedroom apartment is about 3,000 or 4,000 rand a month, so if you're earning dollars, it comes across, the exchange rate definitely multiplies a lot.
Where are you based right now?
I live in South Africa. It's probably pretty similar to Venezuela, which I think is where you are based. It's mostly sunny. Government, we all have our thoughts on our governments. My country has a bit of a rough history. Until somewhat recently, like the past 30 years, things have improved, but we didn't have a democracy in our country. It was based on a system called apartheid, where essentially the white minority was ruling over the black majority of the country. And it wasn't exactly slavery, but it was like slightly above that. They had no rights. They were paid very little. Tons of police and government brutality. It's a very dark history, which is thankfully over now. We had our first elections in 1994, and actually this year is our 5th election since democracy.
I see. And I can understand why are you looking for ways to have a stable life in again economic
Yeah.
way of speaking. Being here in Caracas, Venezuela, I can understand the hustle behind the freelancing life, if we can call it that way, or the independent.
We live in
work
beautiful, sunny countries. Lots of lovely people. My country, we're currently sitting on 40% youth unemployment. So that's people between the ages of 18 and 35. 40% of them are unemployed. The general unemployment rate is a little bit better, which is about 30%. It's currently the highest unemployment rate in the world. It's just from primarily government mismanagement, like lots of corruption, cronyism, just stagnated, economic growth. So and obviously, if you have something like apartheid, where people are basically not quite slaves, but being paid obscenely little, they have no development, they're living in traditional mud huts, they've got no running water, electricity. There's tons and tons of endemic poverty that's, even for a competent government, is very hard to fix. So that leads to all sorts of societal, problems. Like in South Africa, there's obviously a very high crime rate, because when you're that poor, where like even putting food on the table is difficult, where you don't even have electricity or water in your home, you don't have even a toilet in your school, even doesn't have a toilet or water, then the what you consider valuable compared to, let's say, in America, no one would consider stealing copper pipes, for example, or traffic lights, for example, get stolen in South Africa. Electrical cables, even railway lines. In one of our biggest cities, Johannesburg, there was a story a while back where some scrap thieves stole about 60 kilometers, I think it's like 40 miles worth of railway line in one night.
In one night.
Yeah, they're definitely motivated. It's just there's no productive work for 40% of them to do.
Source of motivation. It's probably very hard, trying to find, doing whatever you can to bring the food on the table. Yeah.
Our minimum wage is about 200 to 300 Rand a day, which works out to probably like $10 a day. And things are definitely cheaper here than they are in, say, San Francisco. But it's still very hard to get by on such a limited amount of money if you even have a job.
A very powerful contrast, of course.
Yeah.
What about your social circle? Do you consider, or you have a social life at the moment? And are your peers currently trying as well to have an independent work life online, for example?
Yes, definitely. A lot of people, they actually leave the country. They try and find work overseas. Even our immediate neighbors, Australia is a very popular location. New Zealand is another one. But closer to, like on the same continent, there's Namibia and Botswana. Botswana particularly is a very successful African country. It's an example of the potential of South Africa. So they also have a native-led government. They had the same history of colonialism and racism, but they've managed to clamp down on the corruption and petty crime, and that's helped them become a very successful country. One of the bigger issues facing our country is something called load shedding, where our government, through mismanagement and neglect of our electrical infrastructure, we don't have enough electricity for the country. So we have periods of the day, every day, where the power just goes off. Like currently my electricity is off right now.
Man, you was working online, and mostly a big part of the country is currently going online as well, trying to look for ways to earn money and have a more
you can imagine
positive
if you're
balance.
If you're like a bakery or an industrial, any kind of business that uses a lot of electricity, when load shedding gets bad, we can have 8 to 12 hours of no power every day. So it's very hard to run a business and in those in those circumstances. So I'm fortunate. I have a laptop. It has a battery that lasts me about 3 or 4 hours. So even when the power goes off, I have 3 or 4 hours of work, and then you just go outside and touch grass,
Okay, so let's use the best of our time together right now. Knowing this backstory, I can tell that is admirable to look at your art, knowing that you are facing this problem that you are telling me, and then you are doing an opening time to create this type of pieces and to express yourself. And then we have more pacific artworks like this one, for example.
Yes. A more restful looking scene in this case.
Sometimes it's needed, this time of peace.
Yes. This was a stressful time, relatively speaking, because obviously you had to make an artwork each day. And then in addition to that, you're doing your commission work on Fiverr or whatever. So you're trying to balance your work that pays you. I mean, it's cynical to say, but ultimately that you have to put food on the table. So art has to come second sometimes to the work side of it. And as well, you're trying to balance it with when you have electricity and when you don't.
It's funny to know the other side of what appears to be a restful piece, but the process behind it maybe is what
I was definitely going for a restful piece on this one. I think I actually took a break the next day. That was the only day of October I didn't post something. It was the day after this one. So
okay.
Yeah, definitely inspired by I need a break.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to talk with you about that piece. I saw one of your first posts.
Oh, yeah.
This one, for example, the use of Gothic architecture.
Yeah.
So what is the concept behind this?
That is one of those RPG Maker ones I mentioned. That was part of a tile set or asset pack, whatever you want to call it, that I did make for RPG Maker. So that whole church was built out of little pieces that I made for the game I was making with my friends.
You build this with every little piece to combine all of the tiles, and for the people that are listening right now, a tile set is mostly used for applications, for video games, for software, or visually speaking. So you can buy a tile set so you can have a background, a map for your video game people in this piece. The tile set manages only the backgrounds, right? And the people are separate.
I never made any people. The RPG Maker people I thought there's a lot more variety in both like hairstyles and clothing. So my friends and I were able to get our vision across just using the default characters.
Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm happy that I am not seeing people here, because a question goes to my mind. If I see a person here, why is this person not moving? So if we can't add movement to time of content to the people in the game, I'm happy to see that we can have a background, and then you can manage the illumination or the animation separately.
Yeah.
So it's great. Maybe the trees, right, can move.
Yeah. This was very early on in my pixel art journey. I think that was 2020 or something like that. There you can see the tile set right there. That Gothic pack has all the tiles I used to make that church.
Okay, so this is a pack. Is currently available, this pack?
Yes, it is. So with these, I didn't add any of the lighting or whatever, because I don't know how to include that in an asset pack. So this is a more like if you know how to do lighting and whatever in Unity or RPG Maker, then you could get the result you saw in the other one. But this is just the tiles. This is what they look like out of the box.
The use of the details in the tile set.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Gothic architecture.
And what about Dark Souls? Are you going to do a pixel art inspired in Dark Souls?
I've done some for clients. I'll add that to my list of Instagram ideas, some Dark Souls inspired stuff. I love the favorite game,
Dark Souls?
In the series, I mean, Bloodborne is obviously in terms of art style, that's a very strong contender. I started with Dark Souls 3, so that one has a special place in my heart. Everyone's favorite Souls game is always the first one they played.
It has a special place in my heart too.
Yeah,
of course. I remember
yourself?
Number 3 too. I remember one of the scenes that I always have in my mind, and I can remember, is the boss fight in the bridge.
Yes.
and then you can see at the moment you start to go through the mountain. You are rounding the mountain, and then you reach the bridge.
The city comes
and
into
then
view.
the city comes into view. Yeah, and
I
that
love
scene
that
is
scene. Yeah.
beautiful. The background design.
That's very much what
exciting.
inspired this pack, was all the Gothic architecture in Dark Souls. 3 especially has lots of castles and
Gothic architecture all the way, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
And is there a place in South Africa that you like to visit frequently in your free time? I'm sure South Africa has very beautiful backgrounds or very beautiful parks or lakes. Or is there a place in South Africa that you love going?
There's a few places, because we have a relatively large country compared to a lot of Europe. Like South Africa is about the size of like France, Germany, and Poland put together. So it's like a big distance. So you get a lot of variety in landscape. We've got big mountains on the southern coast. And then wherever you have big mountains, on the one side you'll have lush forests, and on the other side you'll have big deserts. Like wherever you go in the world, like the American Rockies are next to your typical Mexican Nevada type deserts. So we have something called the Karoo. That's our big desert in the middle of the country. Some beautiful landscapes there. There's a place called Sutherland in the Northern Cape, which is our biggest province. It's like our Texas. And it's famously flat. It's one of the flattest places on Earth. It was chosen for a world record attempt for a supersonic car, basically a big rocket with wheels on it. So they were looking all around the world, because obviously if you're going 1,000+ kilometers an hour, you need a lot of flat space. And then they found this place in South Africa that was so big and flat that it was perfect for this car.
Of course. Talking about the process when you are going to do pixel art, for example, is there a thing that you have to do every time you do pixel art, every time you do art? You have a routine, you have something that is always in the process of creation with you?
Good question. For me, with pixel art in general, there's something called scaling, where basically if you want to make, like when you're making something that's pixel art, it's only going to be 100 pixels across, for example. And so that looks very blurry. It's a low resolution. So you have to make it bigger so people can see it on a screen. But when you're doing that, you have to multiply the size by a whole integer, meaning you have to make it exactly twice as big, exactly 3 times as big. Or the pixels themselves end up being stretched and distorted in an uneven way, and it looks very blurry or stretched. So for Instagram, for example, they're like 1080 by 1080. So my canvases for Instagram tend to be 270 by 270 pixels. So that's exactly 1/4 of 1080 by 1080.
The math behind it. And it's important too. At the end of the day, we're talking about pixels, right? And most of the people that are going to find your work will be finding it on a screen with pixels too. So having that in mind is crucial, right?
Yeah.
What
so
about
you have to keep in mind,
you have to keep in mind, of course. If you have a screen, having a very clear understanding of the dimension of the screen and how many pixels you have there, if you are going to dedicate to this type of art, pixel art, to make sure that your art has the best outcome and the best delivery process. I was going to ask you about the future of your art. I see that you have a lot of pieces and different concepts, very specifically and very fixed placed. Do you have in mind developing a movie or a short film inspired in this type of style? I know that you are inspired by Akira and movies. So have you thought about this? Have you think about this type of short filmmaking in pixel art form?
Definitely thought about it. I've actually worked on a few music videos and things like that for clients. The biggest issue is just how long animation and how much work goes into animating things, that if you never animated something, it's hard to appreciate. Like when I post something, I always ask for feedback. I like to think I have a thick skin. So So I'm very open to getting criticism and feedback from people because often that's very valuable.
A very great quality of you. Yeah,
Yes.
of course.
And you can't pay for that kind of feedback, or so it's getting an outsider's perspective is very valuable to me. So that's why I like posting on Instagram or Reddit. And in general, people, like, I've never run into anyone who's been mean. So there's nothing, I've been very fortunate that way. So there's nothing to really fear if anyone getting into art of any kind. Definitely post your stuff, no matter how early on you are in your journey. Post it out there. People have amazing tips and advice and ideas that you would never think of, just because they have a different worldview or different circumstances. And I'm shameless about stealing the ideas and suggestions people give to me, but sometimes they don't know what it's like behind the scenes. So a while back I did that one of a guy like skating down a railing or something, and that was during that Pixeltober where you have to do something every day. So for those, I took about an hour to draw the art, and then another hour to animate it. So it's like 50% of the time goes to just those simple animations, still take about an hour. And then someone suggests something like, oh, make him do a backflip or a somersault. And like, yes, that's an amazing idea. That would look very cool. But that would take another couple of hours to do.
Yeah.
So you just say, thanks for the idea. That would be cool. And then, move on.
Okay, let's go step by step, please. Let me take my time, to keep discovering new ways. I'm sure that is some of the difficult aspects of pixel art animations.
For me, it's the most difficult. Yeah, the most difficult, the most effort. That's why I prefer the drawing backgrounds over characters. It's also the human brain and eye, we're just hardwired to tell if a human looks funny. Whereas if a tree looks funny, it's harder to notice. But if someone's arm's moving in an unnatural way, your brain picks it up very quickly.
Of course.
And it's very hard to get that stuff right. Yeah.
Yeah. Pixel art can tell a lot of things and can make the user, for example, if we talk about video games, a very nice pixel art work can achieve a very nice experience for the user that doesn't compare with a 4K resolution movie in the cinema. You can submerge in the game you're playing. For example, I can give you a story with Metroid and Metroid games. And I love Metroid. I love Metroid games. And it's a very important part of my references as an artist. And, we talk about Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Fusion. And have you played any Metroid game in the past?
I don't remember which one, but it was a pixel art one.
Okay. A game that I love very much about Metroid is Metroid Fusion. And, in short words, the main story is that Samus, the protagonist, she arrived in a planet and then she can't leave the planet. And there is a virus that eats the armor and steals the armor from her. So the research team built a new armor for her, and there is a virus on the map that has your armor and is looking for you to kill you. So it has
you gotta build up your new armor.
It has a very thrilling aspect, the game, and the scoring, the music of the game, it just completes everything. So you have a very great pixel work because you are using a more limited space where you can play. If you compare the screen of a Game Boy Advance and then you compare that with the Switch, or the upcoming PSP.
Different scale. Yeah, it's like 300 pixels back in the day versus.
I think it's around that 300 pixels wide. And the colors.
Any of the Castlevania games.
Castlevania is a very great example too.
Yeah,
of architecture work.
It has some astounding pixel art. The animations. I think the one game, I can't remember which one off the top of my head, but the walk cycle So just the dude moving one leg in front of the other is something like 30 frames, hand drawn. So you get gorgeous, super fluid animation. But I can only imagine some poor Japanese dude slaving away for a week just making Dracula or whoever walk in a satisfying way.
Yeah. And what about the lightning? You want to keep learning more details about the lightning, or you prefer to focus on the animation aspect instead of the visual details like lightning, shadowing, and all of that?
I think you'll definitely notice bad lighting before you'll notice bad animation. So I'm always trying to learn more lighting. As I've gone on, I like to think I've improved with, shadows and those edge highlights. If you compare my early work to the new one, I use a lot more darkness and shadow.
Yeah, sure. The ones that you are delivering right now with the one color palette, outstanding. I would say the use of the shadowing, considering that we have a negative background, so you can see like the building in the center is diving into the shadow. So considering this and how this shadow is merging into the building, you did a really great job.
Thank you. And that one, that series, it's also interesting to see which ones are the most popular, because obviously that it's hard to control for, is the art better in the one versus the other. But I like to think that it's also people's color preferences are coming into play. So I can see what are the general audience's favorite colors. So if, for example, the blue one that I did recently has done pretty well. So I can gather from that a lot of people have blue as one of their favorite colors.
Okay, so what about the result? Have you been getting a favorite at the moment? Which of these pieces is winning right now? The blue one, the yellow one, the orange one?
That light blue one is the favorite for now, I think.
Okay, so this one, the hotel.
Yeah, and then conversely, so that one I think has around 3,000 likes. And then if you look at like the orange or yellow, those ones have like 600 likes in comparison. And in terms of subject matter, this yellow one I think is my favorite. Like I like the design of the building of that one the most.
The more traditional, more oriental,
like the little ramen shop. But you can see the likes. I think that one's on 600 or 800 likes, somewhere around there. So yellow is not a popular color, it seems.
I like the ramen icon and the bars, the horizontal bars on the hat.
Little scan lines, like an old school TV.
Yeah, very nice detail there.
I tried to make it look like a hologram, give it that cyberpunk futuristic look. Like the bank, the green one you can see as well, also has a hologram on it.
And the subway, the train.
Yeah.
The moving train is nice.
So green, for any artists out there, it would seem blue and green are popular colors. So if you're going to use you're going to do a monochromatic challenge like this one, I would recommend green or blue.
You nail it with the subway transforming into the new characters. The
Japanese. It's saying the same thing. And I don't speak Japanese. Just use Google Translate. So apologies to any native speakers if there's anything weird with the grammar or spelling there.
Okay.
But you can't have cyberpunk without some Japanese influence. I feel it's like.
And why is there? Is raining on every piece? Is the rain? The rain comes with a meaning behind it.
A lot of cyberpunk work does have rain, but the big advantage to it is you can have a wet floor, and that gives you nice reflections. And like if you look at games like Cyberpunk 2077, which I haven't played, but
come on, you have to play that.
Reflections.
Nice
that's I don't have anything that can run it, so I just look at screenshots.
Of course.
Yeah. Someday, yes.
Plan to maybe work on a game? It would be nice to look your art in some game.
I've worked on a few small indie games as part of my professional, career on Fiverr and whatever. Met some amazing people. A lot of devs are, super talented and passionate about what they do. They have a lot of the same cultural touchstones as I do. The early games that we have in common, and we can have, like, basically everyone has heard of Dark Souls, so that everyone wants some Dark Souls flavor in their games. The only thing limiting them is either the time it takes to learn how to do art, or some just don't have the passion for the art the same way that I do, but they can see a good aesthetic and they would like an attractive looking game as well. People say graphics don't matter, but you can't see gameplay in a screenshot. You need something that grabs people's attention when they're looking on the Steam page or whatever.
Yeah, the eye can do a lot for the user and the possible player or viewer for your art. So that is a very important part to look at it.
Would love to work on a bigger game project. Definitely, that's my career goal, if you could call it that. Is to someday work on a game.
Oh, okay.
I work in pixel art games.
That is a very nice goal to have.
Thank you. Have you ever heard of Broforce?
Broforce.
It's South Africa's one big game. I don't know if there's any others that have made it overseas. That developer is based in Cape Town, which is one of our capital cities. We have 3 for some reason. So they're relatively close by. I know some people actually work in the studio, and they have offered like an into the studio in future. So that would be a dream someday. And right now they've moved away from pixel art. They're doing more VR type games. Made one called Gorn, which I understand is quite popular in the VR space. You basically play as like a gladiator or something like that. So you hit people with swords and sticks in a first-person VR immersive type game.
Yeah, this immersive aspect can add a lot, right? Imagine, it's like a little bit of Minecraft that it's a first-person experience for the player in a pixel or pixelated world or universe. So exploring different types of experiences besides Minecraft, that is very popular.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in going more deeper in the pixel art aspect of the game design.
Have you ever played games like Ultima or Daggerfall, the early Elder Scrolls games?
I want to try Elder Scrolls. I haven't played Elder Scrolls at the moment, but I know that regarding the plot, it's a very big one, a very extensive game full of details and side quests. Looks interesting to me in that way.
I'm a big fan of those games, especially the earlier on in the series you go. The detail and world is insane. Like in Daggerfall, for example, which just came out in 1996, I believe. Say you need food, so you go and steal a loaf of bread from a shop. You get arrested. You get sent to court. You can either have a lawyer or you can argue your case in front of the judge. If it goes badly, you get thrown in prison. Once you're in prison, you can escape. You can take out a loan to buy a house. It's basically like a little fantasy world that every detail you can live in.
Nice. I can imagine when Elder Scrolls became available in a VR, when you can put the goggles and you can try the game.
Yes.
And that changed a lot.
Yeah, those were also inspired by another series called Ultima. Ultima Underworld particularly was like the grandfather of a lot of first-person games that you get today. Just had a battery notification. Our government-mandated outside time is coming soon. Would like to carry on the conversation at any point if you're game.
For sure, let's do that, man. Yeah, thank you for
interviewing.
that.
My dad is a journalist, so I can appreciate the skill set that goes into interviewing. To be able to actually listen and engage with the people you're talking to, and that's not a skill everyone has. So
I appreciate
you're doing very well, especially in your second language.
Oh, yeah. I try my best with my English. Give me the opportunity to meet people like you and to know more about amazing art, like your type of art and your work. Let me know for upcoming releases and upcoming projects.
Thanks, man.